My younger sister and I had always been close. Before I went off to college, neither of us had ever spent more than one day apart. It was tough when I left home. In fact, my sister pleaded with me to stay. With an age gap as large as ours was, it didn't take long for me to realize that full-ride scholarship meant nothing in her eyes. She was only 6 when I graduated high school, and I had to head for the university just before her 7th birthday. As much as I tried to make it up to her, to tell her nothing would change between us aside from the mileage, you'd be surprised how much hate can be stored in the face of a little one, how much pain can be present in those eyes. Sadly, I imagine that's because they haven't learned to temper their expectations, to view the world for what it is. Life is far more strange than most of us give it credit for, and the idea that modernity is the death of mystery is the greatest lie ever told. That's not something they'll teach you in college, and I'll never get over the fact that it took me this long to realize it. It all began during winter break of my senior year. Just months away from graduating, I was hoping to escape the noise and spend a bit of time back home. Despite all of the changes going on in my life, I anticipated business as usual to be awaiting me back in my hometown. The last thing I expected was for evil itself to be nesting there instead. My childhood home had always made my peers envious. A large house, surrounded by 10 acres of woods, will do that for you. When I'd arrived home in years past, my sister had always burst through the door, running towards me as fast as her little legs could carry her. Even though she had been devastated at the idea of me leaving 4 years prior, we quickly discovered that the best way to spend our time when I was back home was with each other. With that in mind, you can imagine my surprise when, this time, only silence greeted me at the door. I parked the car in the gravel driveway before getting out and approaching the front door. Feeling no need to knock, I tried the door handle and found that it was unlocked. As I stepped inside, I saw that my parents were working frantically in the kitchen. They both froze when they saw me, shouting out a greeting and expressing how happy they were to see me. Apologizing for being busy, my mother told me that my sister was in her room. She muttered something about entering that teenage phase from behind me as I strode through the house towards my sister's room. There are certain things that none of us want to walk in on. The last thing that I expected to do was add to my personal list. When I knocked on my sister's door, she didn't answer. The last thing that I wanted to do was intrude, but it had been long enough since we had seen each other. As I entered the room, I saw my sister laying on her bed. She was positioned on her stomach with her nose buried in her phone, and she seemingly hadn't noticed that I entered the room at all. I tapped my hand against her wall, announcing my presence with a, "Hey, I'm home." "Oh, hey," my sister responded, refusing to look up at me as she did so. An awkward silence fell over the room, and several moments went by before I elected to make another attempt. "It's nice to see you too?" Without another word, my sister rolled over before shoving her phone in my face. I was shocked at the image on the device. A very large man stared back at me from within the screen. The man sat behind a table, his flabby upper body visible as he shoved mounds of spaghetti towards his mouth. The noodles slapped against the sides of the man's face, and drool poured down his chin between bites. With a crazed look in his eye, the man clearly had no qualms about what he was doing. A series of disgusting noises emanated from the device. Ooh. I tore my eyes away from the screen, feeling disturbed by what I had just witnessed. "Do you mind explaining what the hell I just watched?" I spat out towards my sister. For the first time, her eyes met mine. "It's Nikocado Avocado," she explained. He's all over YouTube. I'm not sure how I didn't know about him until now. Still not sure what I just saw, I retorted back. It's mukbang, she shot back, appearing to lose patience. I raised my eyebrows, refusing to say another word. You know, he makes videos of himself eating. Oh, come on. Her voice softened. I'm obsessed with it lately. I rolled my eyes before turning around and moving back towards the door. Freezing before I left the room, I left my sister with one piece of advice. I'm going to bed. Stop watching that crap. It's disgusting. If only she'd listened to what I said. The next morning, I was the last one to wake up. My father had already left for work, and my mother was busy in the kitchen once again. My sister sat at the dining room table, glued to her phone as a full plate of pancakes sat untouched beside her. Nearly positive I knew what I'd see, I stormed over to the table. As I walked behind my sister, my eyes darted over to her phone screen. Nikocado Avocado dominated her attention once again. His body jiggled and bounced as he pranced back and forth across her screen. I peeled my eyes away from the phone before waving my hand in front of her face. She did not bat an eyelash. As I was about to voice my opposition to the content once more, something caught my eye. My sister's skin had a slightly green tint to it. My anger melted away, concern replacing it in an instant. Are you feeling okay? You haven't touched your food, and your skin is green. This seemed to snap my sister out of her trance-like state. She turned her head towards me, meeting my gaze. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just hungry. Well, you've got a full plate of pancakes next to you. You haven't even touched it yet. My sister peered over at the plate, seemingly shocked at the food that sat next to her. I watched as she began scooping the pancakes up with her bare hands, shoving them into her mouth ferociously. In a matter of seconds, my sister had finished the whole plate. She scooped up her phone and retreated from the kitchen and back towards her room. Trying to brush past what I had just witnessed, and fighting back disappointment over time that I'd be missing with her, I decided to have a lazy day at the house. After all, how could I be too upset if she had caught a bug of some kind? By the time the evening had rolled around, there was still no sign of my sister. Deciding that I should check on her, I moved through the house in the direction of her room. As I approached the door, a low grunting sound caught my attention from within. Slowly, I pushed through the barrier. Inside the room, my sister stood in the corner facing the wall. Her slender frame had been replaced by a large, pear-shaped body. The newfound fat rolls jiggled and flopped as she let out a deep, guttural moan. Her skin had changed once more, now reflecting a much darker green tint. The form of her body sat slightly hunched over as she rested her hands on her knees, and I could hear the sounds of a Nikocado Avocado video playing from the phone placed on the ground in front of her. My jaw hung loosely as I searched frantically for something to say. The form that had enveloped my sister must have felt my presence. She whipped around, shooting daggers at me through eyes that were now blood red. You could cut the tension with a knife, and time seemed to stand still. The creature opened its mouth, revealing razor-like teeth as it snarled in my direction. Before I could even process what was happening, the thing lunged towards me with impossible speed. I backed out of the doorway, slamming the door in the face of the beast. Expecting the figure to burst out at any moment, I ran down the hallway. But it never came after me, and silence fell over the house once more. Moments later, I heard chomping and lip-smacking sounds begin once again. Fighting back against a panic attack, I retreated back to my own room, throwing the door closed and collapsing onto the floor. That's the last thing I remember before the walls closed in and I blacked out. When I awoke the following morning, I was in my bed. Only the sounds of the birds were waiting to greet me, and the house was still and calm. I began to think I may have imagined the whole thing. As I emerged from my room, I moved towards the kitchen. When I entered the dining room, what I saw stopped me in my tracks. My mother laid on the floor, motionless and void of color. Gnawing on her arm was a human-sized avocado. The thing slurped and smacked as it tore flesh from the corpse of my mother. My father's remains laid ravaged next to my mother's, the only identifier being the watch strapped around his left wrist. I was horrified. With my hands covering my mouth, I began to slowly back out of the room. As I had begun crossing the threshold back into the hallway, a loud creak emanated from the floorboards. The creature's neck snapped towards me, blood and spittle flying from its mouth. I spun around and ran. The avocado gave chase, leaving its meal behind on the kitchen floor and galloping after me. Its green body bounced and wobbled as it did so. Was this thing my sister? What the hell was going on? I burst through the front door, stumbling out onto the front stoop. The creature followed close behind me, shouting indiscernibly in my direction. I'm gonna eat you. My lungs burned as I sprinted down the gravel driveway. The wind stung my eyes and tears poured out and down my cheeks. I shouted behind me, begging for my life from whatever was left of my sister. The creature showed no sign of slowing down, screaming in my direction as it continued its pursuit. I fumbled for my keys as I approached my car. Turning back, I looked over my shoulder just as the creature slowed to a stop. It bent its knees into a squatted position before springing into the air at an impossible height. The avocado flew through the sky before coming down directly onto my car. My heart sank as my vehicle was absolutely flattened. A string of noises poured from the thing as it sat on the shattered remains of my ticket away from this nightmare. With nowhere left to go, I turned from the wreckage and ran straight into the woods. The monster screeched as I disappeared into the tree line. Thorns tore through my clothes and ate away at my skin as I pushed into the brush. It seemed as though hours had passed before I quit running. I rested my hands onto my knees, heaving as I tried to catch my breath. The woods around me were silent, and I saw nothing out of the ordinary as I twisted around, searching for any sign of my pursuer. As I let my guard down and my nerves began to settle, it dawned on me that I had no idea exactly where I was. I sat down at the base of a tree, working to control my breathing as I pondered what to do next. My relief was short-lived. From around the tree, two dark green hands clasped around my neck. The avocado squeezed with a strength that surely could not be coming from my little sister. I fought with all my might to break the grip from my neck, but it was no use. Stars danced across my field of vision, and the world began to fade away from me. Now completely at the mercy of the beast, I blacked out. When I awoke, I wasn't sure how much time had gone by, and my neck throbbed from where I had been grabbed. As I attempted to assess the damage with my own hands, I discovered that I was bound to a stone slab of some kind. My naked body was covered with cold pasta noodles, and I retched atop the table that I had been placed upon. Although my vision was blurred, I could tell that I had been placed in a chamber of some kind. The only light that poured in came from a chimney-like column that revealed the moon through its opening. Just as I was able to deduce that the moon was full, a large spotlight snapped on, revealing my avocado-encased sister standing beside the slab that I was strapped to. The creature seemed to pay me no mind as it frantically moved back and forth across the side of my prison, a far cry from the way it had behaved towards me earlier. After pacing for several minutes, the beast disappeared into the surrounding darkness before re-emerging with a large broadcasting camera. She placed the camera up so that it faced the table that I now lay on. Without so much as a glance in my direction, the creature uttered a phrase that made my blood run cold.
"The tribute, just as you requested him."
Out of the corner of my eye, a massive figure began to stir at the edge of the chamber. The form moved towards me, emerging from the darkness to reveal the most terrifying thing that I had ever seen. The thing looked like a large slug, slithering towards me, taking its time as it did so. A human face sat perched atop the mounds of flesh and rolls of fat. It was huge. It towered over me, rivaling the size of a 2-story house. The thing squished as it made its way towards me, and a nasally voice boomed throughout the chamber. "Well done, my good and faithful servant." The avocado bowed to its god before motioning its hands toward the camera.
"We are ready."
"Yes, I'm ready to slay, queen," the blob shouted, slobber and crumbs dribbling down the thing's face. I caught a glimpse of what appeared to be a respirator mask on its chin. As it moved towards me further, the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The flabby form of misshapen flesh was Nikocado Avocado himself. He had done this to my sister, and now he was going to eat me? I struggled violently against my restraints, but they refused to budge. The bulbous, engorged giant raised his arms up with glee. He licked his lips as he expressed his excitement over his next meal. The avocado beast scurried over to the broadcasting camera, pressing play and motioning towards its god once again. A long tongue sprung from Nikocado Avocado's face. It came down onto my body, making its way across my flesh to and fro. I winced, nearing a point of accepting my fate. I'm still not sure how to explain what happened next. I watched as a third figure entered the chamber. It was a tall man with long, dark hair. He had a beard, and he donned a simple white t-shirt. The man had an AR-15 pressed against his shoulder. I quickly realized that the figure in front of me was none other than popular YouTuber Moist Critical. He looked at my sister and stated one thing. "You absolute buffoon. You see what I have here? These aren't clips. These are mags." Before I could process what was going on, Critical had begun firing his weapon into the avocado monster. I watched as chunks of green flesh fell from the beast, and after several moments, the form was no more. Oddly, I found myself in the mood for guacamole. My distraction was short-lived as Critical shifted his attention to Nikocado Avocado himself. He fired his weapon into the fat rolls, causing the beast to squeal before slithering away into the darkness. In a flash, Critical unsheathed a large knife before approaching the table that I lay on and cutting my restraints. He explained that he'd been hunting Nikocado Avocado for years, and that we needed to leave the chamber quickly. The weapon likely had no effect on him, and the beast would be back soon. I watched as he grabbed the camera that the avocado monster had set up to record me. I didn't think twice about following him as he turned and made his way through the chamber. As we neared the chamber's exit, I heard Critical say something about actually having a chance now that we had the beast on camera. Something about proving to the world that he wasn't crazy. We turned down a number of corridors, eventually coming to one with light at the end. We both sprinted towards the opening, our freedom well within reach. As I stormed into the moonlight, collections of trees took over where the stone walls once were. Part of me wanted to continue running, but I turned around to look at my rescuer once more. His weapon was now pointed directly at me. Critical apologized profusely and assured me he didn't want to hurt me. He told me that no one had survived an encounter with Nikocado in his true form before. Apparently I had been the first. As he begged for my help, the barrel of his gun left me feeling as though I had few options. I've been following Critical through the woods for hours now. The journey has been silent, aside from a few rumblings about a base camp of some kind. I, for one, have nothing left to go back to, and this whole experience has pushed me off the ledge, if you will. I don't know exactly what this new journey will look like. All I know is, no matter what Critical says, when we meet again, Nikocado Avocado is mine.